Hello, everyone. Today I would like to talk about the 1975 album Scheherazade and Other Stories by the band Renaissance. Renaissance is a band that I've recently discovered, probably within the last 5 years, and have really enjoyed all of their output. But I wanted to talk about this one specifically because it is based on the fairy tale collection, the 1001 Nights, or the Arabian Nights as it was called in the past. Um, so this will be part of the series of albums based on books. Renaissance is an interesting band. They formed out of the Yardbirds, just like Led Zeppelin did, but they had a harder time finding their footing and in the direction that they wanted to go in. And it wasn't until they had Annie Haslam join the band that they really kind of found out the direction that they wanted to go in. Annie Haslam is an incredible singer. She has an amazing vocal range and really brings just a beautiful, skillful voice to the complex music that the band creates. They have kind of a folk prog style. They did do some electric stuff early on in their career, but they started getting folky as time went on. And sometimes that even goes to jazz. It's kind of a fusion style. This particular album, the section that's based on the 1001 Nights, is the Song of Scheherazade, and that is the entire second side of the album. I'm going to go over the tracks really quick, so I'm going to start with the stuff on the first side that isn't necessarily based off of the same source. The first track, Trip to the Fair, is apparently based on a date that Annie Haslam had with Roy Wood, who was a founding member of Electric Light Orchestra, and has this kind of strange hallucinatory story about somebody at the fair who goes and all the people disappear and all the rides stop. And she kind of goes on this interior journey and then suddenly pops back and everybody's back at the fair and they're all kind of looking at her. It's a good track. The opening there's a very long intro at the beginning that really sets the tone for the album. Beautiful piano, and that track leads into The Vultures Fly High, which is the shortest track on the album, and really a beautiful track that seems to be about critics and how they are. She kind of compares critics to vultures and how they fly around waiting for their chance to pick at somebody. And it ends with the concept that eventually the critics have their own critics that come after them. They're just as much in line for critique as everybody else. Ocean Gypsy, for me, is really the high point on the record. It's the last song on side one, and it is just kind of a beautiful story. It seems like these lyrics are intentionally, I don't want to say vague, but they don't tell direct stories. They hint at stories and leave a lot of room for interpretation, which I really enjoy. And Ocean Gypsy seems to be the story of a woman who gives as much as she can of herself and never receives anything in return. It's really beautifully sung, and they often did this live, even after the rest of the songs from this album fell away. They did Song of Scheherazade for a really long time, but Ocean Gypsy seems to be the one that stayed in their repertoire the longest. And that's side one. Side two, like I said, is all the Song of Scheherazade. Now, Scheherazade in 1001 Nights is the main character in the frame story of the narrative. So this book of fairy tales has a frame story where basically it begins and gives the reason why all these stories are being told, and then it ends with that story being kind of finished. In this particular case, it has and there's a lot of fairy tale books that have frame stories. This one is one of my favorites. So there's a sultan who finds that his wife is cheating on him and in his rage he decides that women can never be faithful, and he starts this process where every night he gets married at the beginning of the evening, um, and then at the end of the evening he has his wife beheaded. And he does this every night because it's the only way he feels that he can have women stay faithful to him. It's really vile and disgusting. And then Scheherazade becomes one of his brides, and she tricks him by, as the night is ending, she begins to tell him a story. And the story is very intriguing, but she says, "Okay, we don't have any more time, so I'll have to tell you the rest tomorrow evening." So he keeps putting off her execution, and for 1001 nights, she tells him a story every night, which eventually kind of shows him the error of his ways, and they are married and live happily ever after, as it goes in fairy tales. And this is the story that this song is mainly concerned with. The track is almost 25 minutes long. It is incredibly put together. Renaissance is known for using a lot of symphonic instruments in their work, and this album is the pinnacle of the merging of their prog rock and their symphonic instruments into kind of a cohesive whole. They work so well together in this record, and especially in this track. The middle starts as kind of a prog rock odyssey, and then really turns into a classical music odyssey, and both aspects of it are incredible. The track opens with vocals by John Camp, who's the bassist of Renaissance, and he sang a lot of the older songs before Annie Haslam was part of the band. But once they got Annie, of course, she was such an incredible singer that he didn't really take on vocal duties anymore. But at the beginning of this song, we get vocals from him, and it's a nice change. He sounds really good, and it kind of prepares the way for Annie's part for the rest of the song. Um, Only one part of the Song of Scheherazade is based on one of the stories other than the frame story from 1001 Nights. And that is The Young Prince and Princess. And it's sung by Annie right in the middle. Again, it's a very vague lyrical story, if I could even call it that. I'm sure that they took inspiration from the story of the same title, but the lyrics don't really pin down that story. And then after that, it goes back to the frame story and ends with them getting married and Scheherazade and the Sultan living happily ever after. Like I said, the music really matches perfectly. The instrumental sections are absolutely incredible. I do have one complaint about this album, and I don't know if it's a fair complaint because it might have just been something that I thought of and that they didn't. But it seems to me that they had a perfect opportunity to make this entire album based on the 1001 Nights. It is literally called Scheherazade and Other Stories. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the other stories are from 1001 Nights, but I feel like the first three songs could have very easily been interpretations of some of the stories from 1001 Nights, which would have kind of added a cohesiveness to the entire record. As it stands now, you've got side one is a Renaissance record, and side two, which is based on 1001 Nights. And I think it would have been incredible to have the other stories, of course, be stories. They're picking as a model to make this second song from one of the greatest storytelling stories of all time. So it would have made a little more sense to me if the first part of the album was also connected to the 1001 Nights. Still, I can't complain too much because the first three songs on the album are absolutely incredible. So it's a tiny complaint. if I were to grade this album, I think I would give it overall an 8 out of 10. I think it's outstanding. It's not my absolute favorite Renaissance album. I love that band, and I'm sure I'll talk about some of their other albums later. But as far as the specific album goes, I think it's an incredible moment for Renaissance, specifically the symphonic strings coming together with the prog rock, and really, really worth a listen. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching the video. If you like it, please, or if you like it, please make sure to subscribe, and we will see you in the future.